Well, good morning. And hey, today we're going to show you a little bit how to draft your napkin holders. So I'm going to have you design two completely different napkin holders. And the reason we're doing this is usually the first one turns out pretty good, but the second one, you start to get some better ideas and start to incorporate more things. What I would recommend is draw one and then hook up with your friends virtually and take a look at what they're doing, get inspired, get some ideas, and see what you come up with. Okay. So without any further ado, let's show you guys how I'm starting. This paper on my table looks like a regular piece of paper. It is not. This is the big piece of paper I gave you. So this is 17 this way, 11 this way, not to be confused with a standard piece of printer paper. See the size difference? That kind of puts it in perspective for you so that you can see the difference. So let me show you real quick. I've started out with my half-inch border, my half-inch name tape that goes all the way around, and then I have a very light Lucky L here, and that's what we're going to use to draft with. Okay, so I'm going to grab my T-square. I'm going to grab my scale, and I am using a pencil. An old school, fairly dull pencil. And the reason I'm doing this is it writes darker, and I think it'll be easier for you to see online. Okay, so I'm going to come over in our napkin holders. The front of it's going to be 5 inches and it's going to go up 5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what I'm going to start with is I'm going to draw just a regular plain Jane, no frills napkin holder that is 5 by 5, and I'm going to make it 3D, and then I'm going to go back and alter what I have. Okay, so this is what I find to be the easiest. It doesn't mean it's going to be how you do it, but this is what I find works for me. Okay, so there's my front of my board. That board actually is a ½ inch thick, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give it a little thickness. Those are going to be half inch, and so let me measure one of them. Get it running here. There we go. There's a ½ inch. And so I've just made the front board 3D. And I highly recommend you do it this way because otherwise kids forget how to add the thickness of each board. So there is the front board of my napkin holder. Okay. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a board down here. And this board's going to go back. And then we got to go up exactly a ½ inch because that's how thick the base is. And we're going to add another board. Okay. And this goes back 2 inches. It's actually going to be a 2.5 inch piece, but it goes back 2. So I'm going to start with this corner here. I'm going to measure out 2 inches. And the kind of cool part about that is that's going to tell me where my backboard, the second board, goes up. Now watch this. Without any fancy measuring, I need to measure up 5 inches up. I don't have to measure anything because watch this. I can set my compass, my triangle T-square here, and I can draw a diagonal line that goes back a ½ inch there. I can slide my T-square over here and draw a line over here. That might be a little high. Okay, so I know you're thinking this doesn't make any sense. Watch this. See this intersection where those two touch? That is 5 inches up from the base. It's going to come over and it's going to hit the diagonal line over there. And voila, now I know that this is the size of the board that is back there. And it goes over 5, comes down, and see right where these two touch? We're going to put a diagonal line in that goes this way. Now, I do need to measure the thickness of that backboard, so I'm going to come in, and from this corner, I'm going to measure back exactly a ½ inch and put a mark. And then I can bring this all the way down to the base, and I can bring it all the way over from where they intersect to that diagonal line, okay? So that works out pretty well. I am going to erase some of these little tails, and I like to get rid of those because otherwise I tend to get confused and I start erasing the wrong things or measuring off the wrong lines, and that's no bueno, okay? So actually this board doesn't go all the way through, does it? So I'm going to erase that. Now, look at that. That's starting to look like a napkin holder, okay? One thing that most kids forget is this line right here that just goes from there till it touches there, okay? All right, so now this looks like we're just butting these two pieces of wood up against each other, and we're not really doing that. We are going to do what we call a rabbet, and a rabbet comes halfway in to each board, so I'm going to measure a quarter put a mark, and I'm going to measure a quarter, and I'm going to put a mark. And so right here and right here, I am halfway into each one of those. So now I can darken that up a little bit because I'm not going to change that around. Darken that up. Darken this up. Okay, and I'm going to erase this line here. So now I'm actually showing you how long the base is because it kind of notches into the side views. And I have my first napkin holder. Now, that's pretty boring, pretty plain Jane, pretty basic. So I think I'm going to come back and alter that. But before I do that, I'm going to scoot over here about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to draw a line up, and I'm going to measure over 5. I'm going to measure up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to draw my second napkin holder right here. Okay. And so the beauty of using this big paper is we can get 2 napkin holders on one page. I think it's going to be close, though, the thickness of these things. So it's going to be really close over here to make it fit. But I think we got it. Okay. So this is the start of my second napkin holder, which I will draw out as we go. Okay. And oh, look at this. I don't need to measure the thickness because I can take, if this was a 1/2 inch, then we know my pencil is so dull I have to give it a little extra space here. That's a 1/2 inch, right? Which means this too is a 1/2 inch. And then I can do the same trick. I'm going to use this diagonal line and this diagonal line to tell me where the back of this napkin holder is going to be. So I'm going to set this right here and transfer that to here. And then I'm going to go to the back of that board, which is a 1/2 inch away over here. And I'm going to draft a line to there. Oh, look at this. This is going to work out just perfect. So I'm going to come down here. This is the back of that board. So I'm going to come down here. The front of it comes down here. It stops a 1/2 inch from the base. Look how quick this is. This is working out really, really well. And voila, I have the start of 2 napkin holders whipped up. Now, when I say the start, this is not what you're turning in, okay? You are not going to turn in 2 napkin holders that look like this, because if you made your napkin holders look like that, you'd get a good solid C+ in this class, and that's no good. We have some things in the rubric that we have to do to these to alter them, okay? So the first thing I'm going to tell you is for you to do well. Oops, I think my camera moved. Let me see if I can straighten that out just a little bit for you so you can see what I'm doing here. There we go. So on the rubric, it says that number 1, you have to alter the outside shape somehow. It also says you have to alter the inside somehow. And number 3, you have to laminate the board. So there's some things that have to happen here for this to get you an A. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's start on this one and figure out how we're going to alter or change or modify this. And so maybe I will do something so simple on this first one is I'm going to add some mountains at the top. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put a line there. And then see, I am just using my triangle pretty freehand here, aren't I? I'm not using any specific angles. I'm just going to draw what look like mountains. And I picked the mountains because that's pretty popular with you guys, because a lot of these napkin holders tend to end up being evergreen themed. And since we live in the mountains, so there we have some mountains, right? Now, I'm going to cut off the rest of this line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my T-square, and I'm going to draw a line at all the peaks. Does that make sense? And a line over here on the end, okay? So now I'm going to physically cut away, or in this case, erase away, the parts of the board that no longer exist because the saw is going to cut them out of there, okay? And this is no longer here at all. Probably not a great idea to mount a camera on a table that has wheels so that when I erase, the whole thing wiggles around. But see, watch this. You're going to love this. I'm going to come right back here, and I'm just going to bring this down. I'm going to bring this line down. And I'm going to bring this line up. And voila, we have some mountains. Okay. And so there are my oh, you know what? I didn't parallel those. That's why it looks a little odd. I need to bring that to there. I need to bring that. The front and back lines need to be parallel. What I did is I just used my triangle without checking or modifying it so that the angle is correct. So there, this is going to look much better. So now I have cut a set of mountains that I think will look kind of cool when we're done. And so I have a set of mountains on there. Whatever you do to this side, I would like you to do both sides. You have to alter both sides somehow. Now, you might choose to do something different on the back side than the front. That's fine. You'll also notice that when I draw the lines in here for our laminations, that these are not evenly spaced, and that might look a little bizarre, but it's not a big deal. So on this first one, I'm going to do, what am I going to cut out of the middle of this that I think would be kind of cool? I'm going to cut a tree out. So I would sit down and I'm going to come up at least a ½ inch. I usually like to come up a little farther, and I'm going to come up 3/4. And that's going to be the bottom of whatever I'm going to cut out here. And when I cut something out here, the reason I went up high enough is when I cut it, I don't want to see this base shining through over here, okay? Just want to be up above that. And so if I came up here and drew a little stump and then drew a tree that kind of comes down 45 and down 45 and then came up at some this predetermined angle. Now this is going to be a very, very basic tree. Looks more like an arrow than a tree. And that's why I don't teach art, ladies and gents. I'm going to round these over just a little bit. Okay. And I could use a circle template. I could use a compass, or since it's a tree and trees aren't perfect, I just freehanded that. Okay. And that's fine. The artwork can be freehanded. That still looks like an arrow, doesn't it? Well, imagine I was an art teacher and I could draw. I would make that look like a tree. Okay. And so I'm going to cut this tree out completely so it's not there. And you know what happens when I cut that tree out? See this line here? Watch this. I can see it going through there, can't I? And right now it looks a little confusing. Let me add some lines for our laminations or our strips. So I'm going to come in here and every inch I'm going to put a line. So watch this. These are the pieces of wood that we're gluing up. So I'm going to put one here. And again, I didn't check to make sure my tree or anything was perfectly centered. And so it might look a little weird. But I think what you're going to learn from that is maybe you want to measure out everything so it looks more balanced, more even, more symmetrical. Okay, and then right here, where that color came through, I can see a line there. The rest of them look pretty good, huh? Okay, so that's what the front of my napkin holder is going to look like. And now I need to do the back. Now, to keep the length of this video down, I'm not going to draw the back right now. You get the fact that he's been on this one. Let's imagine I changed the top and I just did an arch, a radius, if you will. So I'm going to come over 2.5 inches from the end and put a mark, and I'm going to come up 2.5 inches from the bottom and put a mark. And where those two marks cross, I can set my compass to 2.5. Good there, good there. Good. Okay, I'm going to tighten this down a little bit. So I just came and picked a spot 2.5 inches in and 2.5 inches over, and I'm going to draw a radius, and that's going to cut the front of the board, right? Now watch this. To make the cut the same cut all the way through the board and have it show on this back side, if I take my T-square and triangle from where I started, draw a ½ inch diagonal line, and then use that as the center of my compass, okay? It should draw for me a nice radius, and right there we lose it. We can't see it back there, okay? So see how I did that? And then I'm going to erase the rest of this. We're going to get rid of all this. Voila, that's gone. We're going to get rid of that line that's inside of there because we cut it off. And we're going to cut this off, okay? So imagine I have done this to the front and the back, okay? So that it looks nice and neat. And I can go back and darken everything up. It kind of looks kind of shady right there, doesn't it? Looks like someone didn't really put a lot of effort in. Just trying to keep this video relatively short so it doesn't feel like you're watching this thing for the rest of your life. And then we're going to come in here and darken this one up. Okay. And again, for the length of the video, imagine I did this to the back one. It's the same scenario. Come down 2.5, over 2.5, and set the compass. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, that's on the front piece. No, it's actually the center for the back piece. This is just in the way, and don't let that bother you, okay? So imagine that we have curved those. We're going to add those vertical lines that are so important every inch. And the reason I add these is it helps you visualize what your napkin holder is going to look like. So again, 1 inch, put a light line, 1 inch, put a light line. We're going to repeat that until we have all 5 boards represented. And again, I'm going to turn my T-square this way, and I'm going to connect that line, that line, that line. And so that kind of gives you an idea what the front of your napkin holder is going to look like, okay? All right, so now let's see what's next. Let's see. Oh, I have decided that I want to put in the center of here, instead of cutting something all the way out, I'm going to use the CNC machine that we talked about, right? And I'm going to take this logo from the famous CSU Rams and put that on my napkin holder. And so what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to simply write in the middle of this CSU Rams logo, and then the name of the file, which is Rams 357, okay, is the name of the file. And so I'm going to write that all on there. So that's ready to go. I don't have to draw that on there for you, or have you draw that. That would be way too much work and too labor intensive. So you can see I have drafted 2 completely different napkin holders. I haven't quite finished. I'll go back and finish drafting those. But the whole idea is to draw a couple of them and get your artistic side going and do something really clever, okay? Oh, one thing I will add. Let me go back here real quick and show you. See these? If you cut things that are really skinny and really sharp and really small in little pieces, they will break off. Never cut anything, any chunk of wood on these napkin holes that's going to be less than, I'd say like 5/8, which means by the time you're done sanding it, it's going to be a 1/2 inch. Anything smaller than 1/2 inch, you run way too good a chance of breaking off during the process of sanding and finishing and gluing and clamping and all that stuff. So we want to keep them robust enough or thick enough that they won't break. Okay. All right. Have fun designing your 2 different napkin holders on a piece of 11 by 17 paper and ready to turn in at the end of the week. All right. Good luck.